The part that I found fascinating about the interview was probably that even though I thought I knew all I had to know about my mom, I still didn't. I learned that my mom still hurts about the subject of divorce between her and my dad, even though they've been split up for years. The way she talks about him still sounds like she is completely in love with him, which for me wasn't a surprise. However, the amount of love she has for him still was what surprised me. In the interview, she even said, when I fell in love with him, it wasn't like anything I've ever felt before. While saying this, she began to giggle, and anyone could tell that after all these years, he still made her smitten, together or not. Another thing that was fascinating to me was how much of a troubled child she was growing up. My mother has always been very hard on me to get good grades and behave, which I never knew the real reason why. I assumed that it was because she was just doing her duty as a parent, but then she began to tell me about her as a teen. When I was a teenager, I was really screwing up my life, she told me. I was partying all the time, and I couldn't hold a job because I was always out with my friends. To me, this was unbelievable to hear. I couldn't grasp the thought that the person she tried so hard to keep me from being was exactly who she was when she was a teen. This made me appreciate my mom so much more. Knowing that she was speaking from experience gave me relief that she does in fact know what she is talking about. Knowing that she was speaking from experience gave me relief that she does in fact know what she was talking about. While talking to my mom, I learned something that I found myself often trying to ignore. Something that I really didn't pay attention to nor wanted to admit. This is that Reading, PA is no longer the same city I once loved and grew up in. In my interview, my mother said at that time neighborhoods were looking out for each other. This changed due to the financial problems the city had and by losing business. Another thing that contributed to this was the fact that many immigrants and jobless people fled to Reading, PA in order to get a job and have a better life for their families. However, they indirectly became the cause for this city's downfall. When you walk down the streets of Reading, PA, many things come to mind. One of the things that is definitely more prominent is poverty. In a New York Times article by Sabrina Tavernese, Reading is described as a struggling city of 88,000 that has earned the unwelcome distinction of having the largest share of its residents living in poverty. However, it wasn't always this way. Reading, PA was once considered a booming city that was the home to the Reading Railroad and many big companies, including a steel factory. It was mainly middle class and had a population of 40,000 residents, who had almost 1,500 of those residents working for the Reading Railroad. But it is now home to more than 88,000 people and is plummeting very fast. In the 1980s, Reading was still considered a well-nourished city. The buildings made it look very beautiful and it was as busy as ever. There was a street called Penn Street, which was also very popular and had many shops. There were also 2 big department stores, then known as Whitman's and Pomeroy's. The city's businesses were blooming. Reading, PA was also home to things such as Fifth Avenue chocolate bars, before they were bought out by Hershey, Luden's cough drops, or candies, depending on the way you see it, the Reading Brewery, and the very famous Reading Railroad. Although Reading had many claims to fame in the 1800s through its end into the late 1900s, the Reading Railroad was its shining star. The Reading Railroad came to life by the works of a group named the Reading, who also worked very close with people in Philly to help make this railroad big as it was. It gained recognition to the city and helped travelers get transportation to come to the city. It also transported coal and steel. The web of the routes it reached went to places in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and even some in Virginia. In the earlier days in the 1800s, the Reading Railroad endured something that came to be known as the Reading. In the earlier days in the 1800s, the Reading Railroad endured something that came to In the earlier days, in the 1800s, the Reading Railroad endured something that came to be known as the Reading Railroad Massacre. There is a special marker for it that says, in 1877, amidst hard times, unrest hit U.S. rail lines. Workers for the Reading Railroad had endured pay cuts. Here, on July 23rd, militia fired into an unarmed crowd that blocked trains, and 10 people paid... Damn it. Alright. Workers for the Reading Railroad had endured pay cuts. Here on July 23rd, militia fired into an unarmed crowd that blocked the trains, and 10 people were killed. I'm just going to say the whole thing more. There's a special marker for it that says, in 1877, amidst hard times, unrest hit U.S. rail lines. Workers for the Reading Railroad had endured pay cuts. Here on July 23rd, militia fired into an unarmed crowd that blocked the trains, and 10 people were killed. U.S. troops reopened the railroad. This event had been one of the hardest obstacles the Reading Railroad had to get over. However, when it did get over it, it was better than ever. The railroad was one of the main benefactors towards Reading, PA's. The railroad was one of the main benefactors towards Reading, PA's wealth. So when that diminished, so did the hopes of staying a well-developed city. What you saw in the 1980s in Reading is far off from what you will see now in 2015. What you saw in this video was community. There were kids playing, people hanging out on their porches, and houses well taken care of. Unfortunately, that is not the case anymore. In an article titled Extracting Art from a Downfall by Lynn Nottage for New York Times, Nottage explains her trip to Reading, PA, along with her experiences. She says, "What I found was a racially diverse and fractured city that had once been a steel and manufacturing powerhouse, but had since become plagued by rising crime and unemployment. This description, I believe, is perfect for describing the state that the city is in." Everyone knows that poverty can change anything from good to bad really quick. This is exactly what happened in Reading, PA, but it didn't only happen to Reading. It also happened to other cities in the U.S., such as Gary, Indiana, Chicago, Illinois, and Stockton, California. One city in particular shares a similar demise as Reading had. This city is Detroit, Michigan. Detroit had once been a top manufacturing city in the U.S. However, like Reading, it is now poverty-stricken and crime is horrendous. Michael Snyder blames the millions of jobs that have left the country. 60 years ago, most Americans were decent, hardworking people, and there were always good jobs available for anyone that was willing to roll up his or her sleeves and put in an honest day of work. But now all that has changed. Over the past decade, tens of thousands of manufacturing facilities have shut down and millions of jobs have left the country. Unquote. This is a statement from his article called "These 12 hellholes are examples of what the rest of America will look like soon." Okay. This is a statement from his article called "These 12 hellholes are examples of what the rest of America will look like soon." I agree with this statement 100% because the proof is in the way these cities are remembered and how they actually are in present day. This goes to show you that Reading, PA is not the only city who experienced a huge downfall. While poverty is a big problem, so is crime. Reading, PA has 63.9% undocumented immigrants who also contribute greatly towards this. However, according to Don Spatz from the Reading Eagle, statistics for major crimes showed the total was down by 6.5% to 335. Statistics for major crimes showed the total was down by 6.5% to 3,335 cases in 2014, following a 19.8% drop in 2013. However, the total number of violent crimes, murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, rose by 2.8% last year, after a 10.2% drop in 2013. These numbers seem bad to many, but to Reading, they are good. They show a decrease in crime, and from that, it shows the city struggling, but nonetheless trying to get back on its feet. Although many may talk bad about Reading, it will always be my home. This is the place where I was born, where I took my first steps, where I learned to walk, where I went to school, where I learned life. Okay. Although many may talk bad about Reading, it will always be my home. This is the place where I was born, where I took my first steps, where I learned to walk, where I went to school, where I learned lessons that would take me far in life, and most importantly, where I learned to love. I know that Reading can get back on its feet. Yes, it may take some time and a lot of manpower, but with some... Yes, it may take some time and a lot of manpower, but with some tender love and care and proper crime deterrence programs along with jobs to get people off of welfare, I'm more than sure that Reading became... Damn it. Okay. Yes, it may take some time and a lot of manpower, but with some tender love and care and proper crime deterrence programs along with jobs to get people off of welfare, I'm more than sure that Reading can become as great as it once was, and if not better. Until then, I will continue in raising awareness and being one of those people helping Reading, PA to become that great city again. One that no one will be ashamed in calling home.